Dr. Henry Blake was tired. He had been working in his small laboratory for 12 hours without a break. His coffee cup was empty. His shirt had stains on it. His eyes hurt from looking at tiny things through his microscope, but he could not stop working. He was so close to understanding something important about quantum physics. The clock on the wall showed 3 in the morning. The city outside was dark and quiet. Henry was alone in the building. He liked working at night when nobody could disturb him. Tonight was different, though. Tonight something strange was about to happen. Henry noticed something weird in the corner of his laboratory. The air started to shimmer like heat waves on a hot road. Papers on his desk began to move even though there was no wind. He looked up from his work and pushed his glasses higher on his nose. What was happening? Then she appeared. One moment there was nothing. The next moment there was someone standing in his laboratory. Not a human. Something else. Something alien. She was tall, about 6 feet. Her skin was not like human skin. It changed colors, shifting between deep purple and dark blue. The colors moved across her body like waves. Her eyes were completely black. No white parts at all. Just pure black like deep space. She had 4 fingers on each hand instead of 5. At the end of each finger was something that looked like a blade. She wore armor that looked alive. It moved when she moved. It seemed to grow from her body rather than being put on like clothes. On her arms were weapons. They looked dangerous and powerful. Everything about her said one thing clearly. She was a killer. Most people would have screamed. Most people would have run away. Most people would have been too scared to think. But Henry Blake was not most people. He was a scientist. And right now he was looking at the most amazing thing he had ever seen. He stared at her with wonder in his eyes. His mouth opened in surprise and excitement. He forgot to be afraid. He forgot that she might be dangerous. All he could think about was how incredible she was. He spoke without thinking about his safety. His voice was full of curiosity and excitement. He asked her about her skin. He wanted to know how the colors worked. He wondered about the biology behind it. He started talking about the energy her body must use to create those colors. Then he noticed the weapons pointing at his chest. Reality came back to him. His excitement faded a little. He looked at her face and understood. She was not here for a friendly visit. She was here to kill him. The alien was confused. Her name was Zixaria. Though Henry would never be able to say it correctly with his human mouth, she had killed many people on many different worlds. She was very good at her job. But nobody had ever reacted like this before. Usually people screamed when they saw her. They ran away or tried to fight. They begged for their lives. They cried. They got angry. But they never asked her scientific questions. They never looked at her with curiosity and wonder. This human was different. Very different, she decided to speak. Her voice was strange. It sounded like many voices speaking at the same time, creating harmony. She told him his name. She said he had been marked for death. She explained that the collective had decided his research was too dangerous. It had to be stopped. He had to die, Henry repeated the word. The collective. His mind started working fast. He began asking questions. Was it a government? An alliance of different alien species? A hive mind? And his research, how did they even know about it? He was working alone in a small laboratory. His work was not published yet. How could aliens from another world know what he was doing? Zixaria tilted her head. This was not normal. Targets were supposed to panic. They were supposed to be scared. They were not supposed to ask logical questions about how things worked. But she found herself answering him anyway. She explained that the collective watched all developing species. They looked for dangerous technology. Henry was working on quantum field manipulation. If he succeeded, humans would be able to travel faster than light. They would be able to move between dimensions. This could not be allowed to happen. Henry understood now. He asked her why. Was it because humans were not ready? Or was it because it would upset the power structure in the galaxy? Maybe the collective did not want competition. She gave him a simple answer. Both reasons were true. Humans were not ready for such power. And yes, it would change the balance of power in the galaxy. The collective liked things the way they were. They did not want change. She raised her weapon again. She told him his death would be painless. That was more mercy than most people received. She was being kind in her own way. Henry held up his hands, not in surrender, but asking her to wait. He wanted to ask her something. He was curious. She had traveled across space to reach Earth. Her technology was far beyond anything humans had. So why did the collective need an assassin? Why not just destroy his laboratory from space? Why not blow up the whole building from orbit? Why come down here in person? The question made her pause again. He was asking because he really wanted to know. He was not trying to delay his death. He was genuinely interested in how things worked. She found herself answering him again. She told him the collective valued precision. They did not like waste. Destroying a whole building would kill innocent people. That was inefficient. Only Henry had the knowledge that was dangerous. Only Henry needed to be removed. It was cleaner this way, more precise, better. Henry found that fascinating. It made sense from a practical point of view, but then he pointed out a problem. He was not the only person who knew about his research. He had colleagues. He had students. He had published some papers. Killing him would not stop the research. Other people could continue his work. Her weapon lowered slightly. This was not following the plan. Targets did not engage in logical discussions, but his point was valid. She needed to respond. She explained that his papers were incomplete. His colleagues did not understand the work as well as he did. His students were still learning. The collective had analyzed everything. Without Henry, this research would stop for at least 200 years. By that time, the collective would have other ways to control the situation. Henry repeated the number softly. 200 years. That was a long time, long enough that it would not affect the immediate future of humanity. Just his future, and maybe the future of his grandchildren. She had really thought this through. She had planned everything carefully. He looked directly at her black eyes. He told her that she had thought everything through very well. She had made a good plan. She was intelligent and thorough. Zixaria said something that surprised even herself. She said she did not think. She only executed orders. She was a tool. She was a weapon. The collective told her what to do and she did it. That was her purpose. That was all she was. Henry's expression changed. He looked sad. He said that being a tool was worse than what the collective wanted to do to humans. At least the collective was leaving humanity with potential, with hope, with a future. But they had already taken away her potential. They had taken away her freedom to choose. They had taken away her future. The laboratory became very quiet. Zixaria felt something strange inside her. This human was about to die. She was about to kill him. But instead of thinking about himself, he felt sorry for her. He saw her pain. He understood that she was a prisoner in her own life. Nobody had ever done that before. Nobody had ever looked past what she was designed to be. Nobody had ever seen her as a person. She was always just a weapon, just a tool, just an assassin. But this human saw something more. He saw someone who had lost something precious, someone who deserved pity. For the first time in many years, Zixaria did not know what to do. Her training had not prepared her for this. Her conditioning did not cover this situation. She stood there with her weapon in her hands, unable to complete her mission. Unable to kill this strange, curious, compassionate human who had looked at her and seen a person instead of a monster. Henry watched the alien assassin lower her weapon completely. Her hands hung at her sides. She looked lost. She looked confused. Henry recognized that look. He had seen it in the mirror during his years in college. It was the look of someone whose entire understanding of the world had just been challenged. Zixaria spoke quietly. She said she should kill him. Her mission was clear. Her orders were simple, but her voice did not sound sure anymore. There was doubt in her words. Henry pointed out the obvious. She was hesitating. She had not pulled the trigger. Why? She looked at him carefully. Really looked at him for the first time. He was not impressive. He was average height. He was thin. His skin was pale. His clothes were messy and stained. His face showed he had not slept enough. Everything about him showed weakness. He would be easy to kill. One shot and it would be over. But he had done something no target had ever done before. In what he thought were his last moments, he had not begged for his life. He had not cried. He had not gotten angry. Instead, he had felt sorry for her. He had seen her pain. He had understood her prison. She admitted something that scared her. She said she did not know why she was hesitating. This had never happened before. She had never failed to complete a mission. She had never questioned her orders. But now she was standing here unable to kill this human. Henry nodded slowly. His scientist mind was working. He began to explain what he thought was happening. She was designed to be efficient, to kill without question, but she was also intelligent. She had to be smart to do complex missions on different worlds. That intelligence came with a cost. The ability to think meant the possibility of doubt. Zixaria said the collective had trained that doubt out of her people. They had conditioned them. They had removed weakness. They were beyond such things. Henry asked a simple question. Was she really beyond doubt? He pointed to a stool near his desk. He asked if she wanted to sit. He knew it sounded strange. She was here to kill him after all, but his neck was getting tired from looking up at her. The request was so normal, so ordinary, so human. Zixaria found herself moving to the stool before she could think about why. She sat down carefully. The stool made a noise under her weight. She was heavier than she looked. Her body was denser than a human body. Henry pulled up another stool. He kept some distance between them, but he was not cowering in fear. He sat down like they were colleagues about to discuss a work problem. Then he asked her about the collective. He wanted to know more. Were they the most powerful group in the galaxy? Zixaria answered automatically. The words came from her training. She said the collective was order. Before the collective, the galaxy was chaos. Different species fought endless wars. They wasted resources. Entire civilizations destroyed themselves. The collective brought stability. They brought structure. They gave everyone purpose. Henry asked what it cost. What did the galaxy pay for this order and stability? The question hung in the air between them. Zixaria thought about her homeworld. The memories were distant and unclear. Her conditioning had made them fuzzy, but she remembered a planet with shallow seas and beautiful cities made of crystal. Her people had once created art. They had written philosophy. They had been warriors, but also thinkers and creators. Then the collective came. They uplifted her species. They gave them technology. They made them better, stronger, more efficient. They turned them into perfect instruments of control. Perfect weapons, she answered Henry's question quietly. The cost was freedom. The galaxy traded freedom for order. Henry nodded. He was beginning to understand. The collective wanted to stop humans from developing faster than light travel. Once humans had that technology, they would become players in the galactic game. They would be harder to control, harder to contain. The collective wanted to keep humanity weak and limited. Zixaria defended the collective. She said humans would destroy themselves. Young species always did when given too much power too quickly. The collective was protecting humanity from itself. But her voice was not as certain as before. She sounded like she was trying to convince herself more than him. Henry agreed that humans had made terrible mistakes. They had almost destroyed themselves many times. Wars, pollution, nuclear weapons. Humanity had come close to extinction more than once. But humans were also capable of amazing things. They could cooperate. They could innovate. They could show compassion and kindness. Should they not have the right to try? To fail or succeed on their own terms? Zixaria said the collective did not allow such risks. Henry leaned forward. His eyes were bright with understanding. He said it was not really about protecting humanity, was it? It was about maintaining control. Every new species that developed space travel was a potential threat. Better to keep them contained. Better to keep them manageable. Better to keep them weak. Zixaria felt something crack inside her. She had killed dozens of people on many different worlds. She had never questioned her purpose. She had never doubted her mission. But this human was showing her the truth. A truth she had always known but had never let herself see. She was not protecting the galaxy. She was not keeping peace. She was enforcing a system of control. She was helping the strong stay strong and the weak stay weak. She asked him to explain his research, not the mathematics. She would not understand that. But the implications, what would it mean if he succeeded? What would happen if humans developed this technology? Henry's whole manner changed. He lit up with passion. This was what he loved. This was why he worked 12-hour days in a small laboratory. He told her it would mean freedom. True freedom to move through space and time. Humans would not be bound by normal physics anymore. They could explore the galaxy. They could meet other species as equals instead of subjects. They could trade. They could learn. They could grow. Zixaria pointed out the dark side. Humans could also wage war. They could conquer. They could destroy. Henry admitted that was true. Humans could choose to do terrible things, but they could also choose not to. That was what freedom meant. The ability to choose even if the choice might be wrong. The collective had taken away that choice from everyone. Including her. Zixaria stood up suddenly. Her armor rippled with agitation. The colors on her skin shifted rapidly. She said she needed to complete her mission. She needed to do her job. Henry stood as well. He accepted what was about to happen. He faced his death with quiet dignity. He thanked her for listening to him. He said he hoped she would find a way to choose her own path someday. The assassin raised her weapon again. She aimed at the center of his chest. Her finger moved to the trigger. This was it. This was the moment. All she had to do was pull the trigger and the mission would be complete. But she stopped. She whispered the words. She could not do it. She could not kill him. The words felt like rebellion. They felt like freedom. They felt terrifying and wonderful at the same time. Henry stared at her in surprise. She lowered the weapon slowly. Her hands were shaking slightly. Something fundamental had changed inside her. The conditioning that had controlled her entire life had finally broken. This human, with his curiosity and compassion, had done what no one else had ever done. He had made her see that she had a choice. And she had chosen not to kill him. Now they both stood in the laboratory looking at each other with new understanding. The alien assassin was no longer just an assassin. The human scientist was no longer just a target. They were two beings who had found something unexpected. They had found a connection. They had found the beginning of trust. But they both knew this was just the beginning. The collective would not accept failure. They would send someone else. Someone who would not hesitate. Someone who would not feel compassion. The question now was simple. What would they do next? The weapon in Zixaria's hands felt heavy now. She had carried it for years without feeling its weight. It had been like part of her body, natural and comfortable, but now it felt wrong. It felt like a burden she did not want to carry anymore. She told Henry he should run. He should hide. He should tell the authorities what had happened. The collective would send another assassin when she failed to report back. He needed to protect himself, but Henry did not run. Instead, he moved to his computer. His fingers flew across the keyboard. He asked her how much time they had. The word surprised Zixaria. He had said they, not he, they. He was including her in his plans. He was thinking about both of them together. Henry kept typing. He pointed out the obvious truth. She could not go back to the collective now. She had refused a mission. She had disobeyed orders. What would they do to her? Zixaria felt cold inside. She knew exactly what they would do. They would recondition her, wipe her mind clean and rebuild her programming, or they would simply terminate her. Kill her like she was broken equipment. The collective did not tolerate failure. They did not forgive disobedience. Henry looked up from his screen. His face was serious but not scared. He said they were both targets now, which meant they needed to work together. He asked again, how much time did they have? Zixaria's tactical training took over. She calculated quickly. She said 32 hours. She had to send a mission-complete signal within that time. When she did not, the collective would investigate. They would send someone to find out what happened. Henry repeated the number. 32 hours. He pulled up multiple windows on his computer screen. Data and equations filled the display. He said it might be enough time. Maybe. Zixaria moved closer. She looked at the strange human mathematics scrolling past. She asked him what he was planning. Time enough for what? Henry smiled. It was a slightly crazy smile. The smile of someone who had just realized he might survive and was determined to make the most of it. He said he would complete his research. She had told him he was decades ahead of everyone else. If he could finish the prototype, if he could create a working model of quantum field manipulation, then killing him would be pointless. The knowledge would be out there. Other people could reproduce it. The collective could not stop it anymore. Zixaria told him it was insane. He was one person with limited tools. What he was describing would take years. Even someone as smart as him could not do it in 32 hours. Henry turned to face her completely. He said he needed help. She had been to dozens of worlds. She had seen technology far beyond Earth's. Her knowledge of quantum mechanics must be extensive just to operate her ship. If she helped him, if they combined her practical knowledge with his theoretical understanding, they might be able to do it. Zixaria made a sound that might have been laughter. The irony was amazing. He wanted her to help develop the very technology she had been sent to suppress. Henry said it was not about irony. It was about survival. For both of them. Once humanity had this technology, the collective could not take it back. They would have to adapt. They would have to negotiate with humans as equals. And she would have shown her people that rebellion was possible, that freedom could be taken back. Zixaria was quiet for a long time. She thought about everything. Her conditioning screamed at her that this was wrong. She should complete her mission or accept death. Those were the only two options. But that small part of herself that Henry had awakened refused to be quiet. It wanted to live. It wanted to choose. It wanted to be free. She finally spoke. She said she knew nothing about human physics. She did not understand his equations or his theories. Henry said she did not need to understand his theories. She knew how faster-than-light travel worked in practice. He needed her to describe the mechanism her ship used, as much detail as possible. She should not worry about using the right words. Just tell him what happened, step by step. So as the sun began to rise over the city, an alien assassin and a human scientist sat side by side. They were united by necessity and hope, united by the desperate desire to survive, united by a growing trust that neither of them had expected. Zixaria described her ship's fold space generators. She explained how they created bubbles of altered space-time. She used simple words and hand gestures. Henry translated her practical knowledge into mathematical frameworks. His equations took shape faster than he had ever worked before. She pointed to a drawing Henry had made based on her description. She identified a specific component. She said it regulated the quantum fluctuations. Without it, the whole field would collapse. Henry understood immediately. He called it a stabilizer, of course. He had been trying to maintain coherence through brute force. What he needed was a feedback mechanism. He told her she was brilliant. Zixaria felt something warm in her chest. Something she had not felt in many years. In all her time serving the collective, no one had ever called her brilliant. They called her efficient. They called her deadly. They called her a perfect weapon. But never brilliant. The collective did not value individual intelligence. They only valued obedience. Henry continued working. He said they needed to build a physical prototype. Most of the equipment they needed was in the laboratory, but some components would need to be made from scratch. That would take time. Zixaria said she could help with that. She extended her forearm. The armor plates retracted. Underneath was something amazing. Sophisticated tools were built into her body itself. She had molecular forges and construction equipment as part of her biology. Henry stared at the biological machinery now exposed on her arm. It was incredible. The integration between organic tissue and synthetic components was seamless. He asked how her immune system did not reject the foreign material. Zixaria explained there was no foreign material. It was all grown as part of her development. She and her people were designed from conception to be weapons and tools. Everything was built into them from birth. The sadness in Henry's eyes made her look away. He said softly that today she was a scientist and an engineer. If she was willing, she said she was willing. She meant it with every part of her being. They worked through the day and into the night. Their partnership became smoother with each passing hour. Henry learned to read her body language. He understood when her skin colors changed to show concentration or confusion. She learned to interpret his facial expressions. She could tell when he had a breakthrough by the way his eyes lit up. She could tell when he was focused by the way he narrowed his eyes. Zixaria announced they had 20 hours remaining. Time was running out. Henry said they were going to make it. This was actually going to work. But he was exhausted. His body was showing the strain of working for so long without rest. Zixaria asked the hard question. Even if they succeeded, what then? The collective would not simply accept this. They would send fleets. They would send armies. They would view this as an act of war. Henry paused in his work. He met her black eyes. He said they would make sure everyone on Earth knew what they had accomplished. They would publish everything. They would share it freely. Make it impossible for the collective to suppress. If the collective wanted war with humanity, they would have to do it openly. where everyone in the galaxy could see. Zixaria observed that he was either very brave or very foolish. Henry grinned. He asked if he could be both. Despite everything, despite the danger and the impossibility of their situation, Zixaria found herself making a sound that might have been the beginning of laughter. It felt strange. It felt good. It felt like freedom. They continued working, building, creating, two beings from different worlds, working together toward a common goal. An alien who had learned to choose. A human who had seen past fear to find friendship. Together they were doing something that would change the galaxy forever. The hours ticked away. The quantum field generator began to take shape. Piece by piece, component by component, theory becoming reality, hope becoming possibility. 8 hours remained before the collective would investigate. Zixaria watched Henry make the final connections on what he called humanity's first quantum field drive. The device was crude compared to galactic standards. It was barely larger than a car, but the principles behind it were sound. They were revolutionary. Henry's hands trembled as he worked. He was exhausted but also excited. He said once they activated the device, there would be no going back. The quantum signature would be detectable across the entire solar system. Her people would know immediately, Zixaria corrected him. They were not her people. Not anymore. Perhaps they never had been. Henry looked at her with understanding. Then he asked her about her people. What were they like before the collective? The question opened something inside Zixaria, something she thought had been sealed forever. Memories came flooding back, memories her conditioning had tried to bury. She began to speak about her world. She told him her people were warriors, yes, but they were also artists. They were philosophers. They debated the nature of consciousness. They created sculptures from living light. Their cities sang with the harmonics of thousands of voices raised together. They were beautiful. They were free. Henry said quietly that she was still beautiful. The capacity for that beauty was still inside her. He had seen it in how precisely she worked, in how she thought through problems. Art and science were not so different. The colors on Zixaria's skin rippled through shades she had not displayed in years. Emotions she had no words for. She felt something she could not name. Something warm and precious she said she could leave. When she went back to her ship to get the final equipment, she could simply fly away. Abandon this mission. Abandon him. Find somewhere in the galaxy to hide. Henry agreed she could do that. He said he would not blame her. She had already given him more than he had any right to expect. She had saved his life. She had helped him with his research. She owed him nothing. Zixaria moved to the window. She looked out at the city lights sparkling in the darkness. She said she would not leave. Because he was right. If humanity achieved this breakthrough, if they escaped the collective's control, then others might follow. Her people might remember what they were, what they could be again. Henry said she was talking about revolution. Galactic revolution. She turned back to face him. She said she was talking about freedom and hope. He had given her both. She would not abandon that gift. She moved to the center of the laboratory. She activated her ship's transporter. Light shimmered around her and she disappeared. Henry was alone for the first time since she had arrived almost 24 hours earlier. The laboratory felt empty without her. Cold. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Henry felt worry growing inside him. What if she had decided to leave after all? What if the collective had caught her? What if something had gone wrong? The transporter activated again. Zixaria appeared carrying equipment that looked impossibly advanced. She said she had the calibration equipment they needed. And something else. She held up a small crystal device. She said it was a quantum communicator. It worked outside normal space-time. Impossible to intercept or block. If they were separated, if the collective came for either of them, they would be able to coordinate. They would be able to help each other. Henry accepted the device. He understood what it meant. She was planning for their survival. Not just for the mission. Not just for the next few hours. She was planning for their future. Zixaria corrected him. She said there was a difference. She was planning for their future together. They installed the final components. Henry's knowledge and Zixaria's precision combined perfectly. They created something neither could have achieved alone. As they worked, Henry talked. He shared stories of his childhood. He told her about looking up at the stars and dreaming of other worlds. He told her about always believing there was other life in the universe. He mentioned his daughter. She always asked if there were aliens out there. He always told her yes. The universe was too big for humans to be alone. He never imagined he would meet an alien, let alone become friends with one. He trailed off. He was not sure how to finish that sentence. Zixaria supplied the word. Friends. Was that what they were? Henry thought about it. He said they were more than friends. They were partners, allies, revolutionaries maybe. And yes, friends, if she would have him as one. Zixaria's entire body changed to a warm golden color, an expression of emotion she had not shown in years. She told him about a concept from her world. Before the collective, the word was Kreshtara. It meant people who chose to stand together against darkness, bound not by blood but by purpose and respect. Humans might say soulmate, but it was not romantic. It was deeper, more fundamental. Henry repeated the alien word. Kreshtara. He said he liked it. That was what they were. The quantum field generator began to hum. Power flowed through it. Energy readings spiked on every monitor in the laboratory. The air itself seemed to vibrate with potential energy. Something was about to happen. Something big. Henry announced 3 minutes to full activation. After that, the quantum signature would be unmistakable. Everyone would know what they had done. He asked if she was ready. Zixaria said she had been ready since the moment she chose not to kill him. Now they would see if the galaxy was ready for what came next. As the countdown continued, Henry prepared his communication systems. He would broadcast his findings to every research institution on Earth, every government, every news organization. The information would spread like wildfire. No one could stop it. At the same time, Zixaria accessed her ship's systems. She prepared a message of her own, a message that would reach resistance cells throughout the galaxy. Small groups who questioned the collective, who wanted freedom, who dreamed of something better. Henry counted down. 30 seconds, 20, 10. The quantum field generator reached full power. Reality itself seemed to fold around it. For one perfect moment, Henry saw something beautiful. He saw the mathematical structure of the universe, the elegant simplicity underneath all of existence. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Beside him, Zixaria's skin flared with light. Her body instinctively resonated with the quantum frequencies. She glowed like a star. For a moment, she looked like she must have looked before the collective changed her people. Beautiful and free. Henry whispered that activation was complete. He began broadcasting immediately. Data streams flooded outward from the laboratory. They carried the complete schematics, the mathematical frameworks, the proof that humanity had achieved faster than light capability. Thousands of scientists around the world received the information simultaneously. They began verifying it immediately. At the same time, Zixaria's message reached out across the stars, to dozens of worlds, to hundreds of sympathetic minds. The message was simple and powerful. It said only this: it is possible to say no. Alarms began to scream throughout the laboratory. Henry's security systems detected something. Multiple quantum signatures were appearing in Earth's orbit. Ships. Many ships. The collective had arrived. They had known this would happen. They had prepared for it. But knowing and experiencing were different things. Fear crept into Henry's heart. Not fear for himself. Fear for his world. Fear for his daughter. Fear for the future of humanity. Zixaria moved to stand beside him. Her hand found his. The touch was strange. Her skin was cool and textured differently than human skin. But it was also comforting. They stood together facing what came next. Two beings from different worlds, standing together against the darkness. Kreshtara, united by choice and purpose, ready to face whatever the collective would do, ready to fight for freedom, ready to change the galaxy forever. The future was uncertain. The danger was real. But they were not alone. They had each other. And soon they would have allies. People from many worlds who were ready to say no, ready to choose freedom over security, ready to live rather than simply exist. The revolution had begun, and it had started here, in a small laboratory with an unlikely friendship between a human scientist and an alien assassin who had learned to choose. 15 collective enforcement vessels appeared in Earth's orbit. Their arrival was detected immediately by every space monitoring agency on the planet. Humanity's first official contact with alien life was not a peaceful greeting. It was a threat. It was an ultimatum. The message came through on every frequency. It was translated into every human language simultaneously. The words were clear and simple. Surrender the quantum field technology. Surrender those responsible for creating it. Resistance would result in planetary sanctions. In the laboratory, Henry and Zixaria watched the global response unfold on his computer screens. News networks exploded with the story. Governments scrambled to respond. Scientists who had received Henry's broadcast began verifying his work, and slowly, a consensus began to emerge among the people of Earth. Humanity was not going to surrender. Henry watched in disbelief. He muttered that this was insane. Humans had no defense against those ships. The collective could destroy the entire civilization with ease. Zixaria agreed they could, but she said they would not. The collective ruled through the threat of force, not the application of it. Actually, destroying civilizations was inefficient. It created martyrs. It inspired rebellion. The collective was hoping humanity would give in out of fear. Henry said what they both could see. Humanity was not giving in. People all over the world were protesting. They were demanding their government stand firm. They were saying no to the collective. Zixaria's skin displayed colors of admiration. She said his species was proving more resilient than the collective had expected. Humans were showing courage. They were showing unity. They were showing strength. Henry's communicator chimed. Messages were flooding in. The Secretary General of the United Nations wanted to meet with him immediately. So did leaders from dozens of countries. Everyone wanted to meet the man who had given humanity the stars. Everyone wanted to meet the alien who had chosen to help him. Henry said they wanted to turn them into symbols, representatives of human and alien cooperation, proof that different species could work together. Zixaria asked if that was not exactly what they were. They were proof that the collective's control could be broken, that individuals could choose a different path. That freedom was possible. Before Henry could respond, the quantum communicator flared to life. Zixaria accessed it quickly. Her body language changed as she read the incoming messages. She became tense, alert. Henry asked what was wrong. Zixaria said it was her people, her real people. The message she had sent had reached them. There were others like her. Others who questioned the collective. Others who doubted. They were asking what they should do. They were looking for guidance. They were looking for hope. She looked at Henry. Her black eyes reflected the lights of the laboratory. She said his species had gained the stars today. Her species might have just taken the first step toward reclaiming their souls. A new presence appeared in the laboratory. This arrival was different. It was accompanied by the distinctive shimmer of official collective transporter technology. A figure materialized, tall and imposing, wrapped in authority and ancient power. Its form was vaguely humanoid but clearly artificial. A constructed intelligence rather than an organic being. It radiated power and control. This was someone important, someone with authority. It announced itself as Coordinator 73. It spoke for the collective. It said this situation required resolution. Zixaria moved immediately. She positioned herself between the Coordinator and Henry. Her weapons deployed automatically. She said it would not harm him. She would not allow it. The Coordinator regarded her with something that might have been curiosity. It identified her. Unit Zixaria, 7th Generation Combat Specialist. It said her conditioning had failed. This was unprecedented. This had never happened before. Zixaria spoke firmly. She said her conditioning had not failed. She had simply chosen to exceed it. Henry stepped forward. He moved past Zixaria's protective stance. He said if the Coordinator was here to negotiate, then they should negotiate. But it needed to understand something. The technology was already distributed. Thousands of scientists on Earth were working to replicate and improve it. The collective could not suppress this anymore. The Coordinator stated a fact flatly. It said the collective could destroy Earth, remove humanity as a factor entirely. Henry agreed they could, but he said they would not. Because the moment they did, every oppressed species in the galaxy would see the truth. The collective maintained power through fear and violence. Resistance was not only possible but necessary. Destroying Earth would create exactly the instability the collective claimed to prevent. Silence filled the laboratory. The coordinator processed information. It calculated probabilities and outcomes with perfect computational precision. Finally, it spoke again. It said the collective offered an alternative. Humanity could join them. Share the quantum field technology under collective supervision. In return, humanity would be granted provisional membership, access to galactic resources and knowledge. The species would advance by centuries within decades. Henry asked what it would cost. Though he already knew the answer, the coordinator replied with one word: autonomy. Humanity would submit to collective authority, accept their guidance and restrictions. Human expansion would be controlled. Research would be monitored. Military capabilities would be limited. Humans would be protected, prosperous, and peaceful. Henry said quietly that they would be pets. Comfortable, well-fed pets on a leash they could never remove. The coordinator countered that humans would be safe. The alternative was chaos, competition, conflict. Humanity was not ready for the responsibilities of galactic civilization. Henry felt the weight of the decision. He was just one man, a scientist who had wanted to understand the universe. Now he was being asked to speak for all of humanity, to make a choice that would echo through centuries. He looked at Zixaria, at the alien who had been sent to kill him and had instead become his closest ally. He saw the hope in her posture, the way she had rediscovered her own freedom through their partnership. He knew what his answer had to be. He said humanity chose freedom, the right to make their own mistakes, to forge their own path, to succeed or fail on their own terms. Humanity did not need a guardian. They needed the chance to grow, to learn, to become whatever they were capable of becoming. If that meant facing dangers they were not ready for, then so be it. That was what it meant to be alive, to be conscious, to be free. The coordinator was silent for a long moment. Then it spoke. This decision was noted. The collective would withdraw its enforcement vessels. However, humanity would be classified as an unaligned developing species. They would receive no assistance, no protection, no access to collective resources. They would face the galaxy alone. Zixaria spoke up. She said humanity would not be alone. She stood with them, and she was not the only one. There were others on dozens of worlds who questioned the collective's authority. This was the beginning of something new. The coordinator turned its attention to her. It said she had been one of their finest assets. This failure of conditioning would be studied, prevented in future generations. Zixaria said it was not a failure. It was an awakening, and the collective could not prevent consciousness once it had taken root. The coordinator disappeared without another word. Its mission was complete. The collective vessels in orbit began to withdraw. Their departure was detected by every monitoring station on the planet. People erupted in celebration. Henry and Zixaria stood together in the laboratory, surrounded by the equipment that had started a revolution. Outside, they could hear celebrations beginning. Humanity was celebrating its newfound place among the stars. Henry asked what happened now. Zixaria's skin shifted through colors, settling on a warm amber that meant contentment. She said they would continue the work. Humanity would need guides as they explored the galaxy, advisors who understood the powers and dangers out there. She would help with that. Henry asked if she was staying. Hope filled his voice. She confirmed she was staying. Earth was as much her home now as her birth world ever was. Perhaps more so. Here she was not a weapon or a tool. She was simply Zixaria, scientist and revolutionary, friend and ally. Henry said the word. Krishtara, she agreed. Yes, Krishtara. They stood together at the window, watching as the first human ships equipped with quantum field drives began their maiden voyages. Each vessel carried the dreams of humanity. But more than that, they carried hope for countless other species throughout the galaxy. Hope for rebellion, hope for freedom. The alien assassin had failed her mission. Instead, she had helped birth a revolution. In doing so, she had discovered something the collective had tried to remove from her species for generations. She had discovered what it meant to choose. And that choice had changed everything. 5 years had passed since that night in the laboratory. 5 years since an alien assassin had appeared in Henry Blake's life and changed everything. The galaxy was different now. The balance of power had shifted. The old order was crumbling. Henry stood before the Interstellar Council. It was a newly formed coalition of free species. worlds that had rejected collective authority, worlds that had chosen freedom over security. The council chamber was on a space station orbiting a neutral planet. Representatives from 43 different species filled the room. Beside Henry stood Zixaria. Her role as humanity's first ambassador was well established now. She was also his permanent research partner. Together, they had continued developing new technologies. Together, they had helped guide humanity through its first steps into galactic society. The galaxy had changed dramatically. Dozens of worlds had followed humanity's example. They had declared independence from the collective. The ancient power structure was fracturing, not through violence but through something simpler and more powerful, through conscious beings choosing their own destinies. Henry told Zixaria they still called him the accidental revolutionary. He had just been trying to understand quantum mechanics. He had never intended to change the galaxy. Zixaria replied that she had just been trying to complete a mission. Look where that had brought them. Her skin displayed colors of amusement. Henry asked if she had any regrets. She looked at him. At the human who had seen past what she was designed to be, who had recognized what she could choose to become. She said she had none. He had shown her that being alive meant more than following programming. It meant choosing, growing, becoming. Every being in the galaxy deserved that chance. They walked together into the council chambers. Henry thought about the strange journey that had brought them here. An alien had been sent to end his life. Instead, she had helped him change the galaxy. Sometimes truth was stranger than any fiction. The council meeting began. Representatives from many worlds spoke. They shared stories of their own rebellions, their own choices to be free. Each story was different. Each world had its own challenges. But they all had one thing in common. They had all been inspired by what happened on Earth 5 years ago. One representative spoke about her world. They had been under collective control for 300 years. Then they heard about a human scientist and an alien assassin. About how they had stood together and said no. That story had given her people hope. It had given them courage. Now they were free. Another representative described the economic changes. Free trade between independent worlds was flourishing. Innovation was exploding. Without the collective's restrictions, new technologies were being developed at an unprecedented rate. The galaxy was entering a new golden age, but there were also warnings. The collective had not given up. They still controlled most of the galaxy. They were adapting their strategies, becoming more subtle in their control, more sophisticated in their manipulation. The fight for freedom was far from over. Henry was asked to speak. He stood before the council and looked at all the different faces. So many species, so many different forms of life, all united by a common desire, the desire to be free. He spoke simply. He said he was not a revolutionary. He was just a scientist who had been curious about the universe. But he had learned something important. Freedom was not given. It was taken. It was chosen. Every person, every being, every species had to choose freedom for themselves. He said the collective had ruled through fear for thousands of years. They had convinced everyone that order was more important than freedom, that security was more valuable than choice. But that was a lie. Life without choice was not really life at all. It was just existence. He looked at Zixaria as he spoke. He said one person had taught him that. An assassin who had been sent to kill him. She had shown him what true courage looked like. The courage to question everything you had been taught. The courage to choose a different path. The courage to become something more than what others had designed you to be. The council chambers erupted in approval. Representatives from many worlds showed their agreement in many different ways. Some clapped, some made harmonic sounds, some changed colors. Each species had their own way of expressing support. After the meeting, Henry and Zixaria walked through the space station. They looked out at the stars through a massive window. Ships from dozens of worlds moved through space around them. Free ships, independent ships, ships that flew where they chose, not where they were ordered. Zixaria said her homeworld had made contact. After 5 years of silence, her people had finally reached out. They wanted to know about her, about what she had done, about how she had found freedom. Henry asked what she had told them. She said she told them the truth, that freedom was scary, that it came with responsibility and risk, that choosing your own path meant you might choose wrongly sometimes. But it was worth it. Being free was worth any price. Henry asked if they believed her. Zixaria's skin showed colors of hope. She said some did. Enough to start asking questions, enough to start doubting the collective. Change was coming to her world. Slow change, but real change. Henry smiled. He said that was all anyone could ask for. A chance, an opportunity, a beginning. They stood together in comfortable silence. Two beings from different worlds who had found something precious. Not just friendship, though they were friends. Not just partnership, though they were partners. Something deeper. Kreshetara. Souls bound by choice and purpose. Henry thought about his daughter. She was 12 now. She studied xenobiology and dreamed of visiting other worlds. She had met Zixaria many times. She called her Aunt Zai. The two of them spent hours discussing the biology of different alien species. His daughter was growing up in a galaxy where humans and aliens worked together, where cooperation was normal, where differences were celebrated rather than feared. That was the future they had fought for, a future where children from many worlds could grow up free, where they could choose their own paths, where they could become whatever they wanted to be. Zixaria spoke quietly. She said she had been thinking about that night 5 years ago, when she had appeared in his laboratory to kill him. She had been so certain of her purpose then, so sure of her mission. If someone had told her she would end up here standing beside him as a friend and ally, she would never have believed it. Henry said life was strange that way. The most important moments often came when you least expected them. A random meeting could change everything. A single choice could alter the course of history. Zixaria agreed. She said she had made many choices in her life. But the most important one was when she chose not to pull the trigger, when she chose to see him as a person rather than a target. That choice had saved his life, but it had also saved hers in a different way. It had given her back her soul. Henry said the best revolutions began with simple choices. To see another being not as an enemy or a tool, but as a person deserving of freedom and respect. That choice had saved one human life. It had also freed billions. They continued walking through the space station, passing beings from many different worlds, each one free, each one choosing their own path. The galaxy was still dangerous. The collective was still powerful. The future was still uncertain. But there was hope now. Real hope. Hope based on the knowledge that freedom was possible. A young alien approached them. Its species was one Henry did not recognize. It spoke in halting but understandable English. It said it came from a world still under collective control, but it had heard their story. The story of the human and the assassin. It wanted to know how to bring freedom to its world. Henry and Zixaria looked at each other. Then they sat down with the young alien. They began to share what they had learned, about courage and choice, about standing together against darkness, about the simple but powerful act of saying no to oppression. This was their life now, not just scientists or ambassadors. They were teachers, guides, symbols of hope for beings across the galaxy who dreamed of freedom. It was a responsibility they had never asked for. But it was one they accepted gladly, because 5 years ago a human scientist had chosen curiosity over fear. An alien assassin had chosen compassion over duty. Together they had chosen friendship over enmity. Those simple choices had started a revolution that was still spreading across the stars. The fight for freedom was not over. It might never be over. Freedom required constant vigilance, constant courage, constant choice. But now beings across the galaxy knew it was possible. They knew they had allies. They knew they were not alone. As Henry and Zixaria finished talking with the young alien, they watched it walk away with new determination in its movements. One more being inspired to choose freedom. One more potential revolutionary. One more spark that might ignite change on another world. Henry said it was amazing how far things had come. 5 years ago, he had been alone in a laboratory. Now he was part of a galactic movement for freedom. Zixaria said he had never been alone. Not really. From the moment she chose not to kill him, they had been together. Krishtara. 2 souls standing against the darkness, and now there were millions of others standing with them. They walked back toward their ship. Tomorrow they would travel to another world, another group that wanted to learn about freedom, another opportunity to